Uber is easy, popular, often cheaper than taking a taxi. Since the Silicon Valley company came onto the scene, it's been Uber's way. Others get nudged off the highway. The company has expanded explosively, transforming cities everywhere it goes. But around the world, traditional taxis have been pushing back. In France, Uber faces violent protests and criminal charges. In the U.S., it faces lawsuits.
Uber agrees to pay $28 million to settle lawsuits over its safety practices.
In Montreal this week, taxi driver protests scored a victory. The mayor now calls for Uber's suspension.
We are working with standards, and if there's unloyal competition, I have a problem with that.
As Uber rises, so does taxi rage.
From 5 p.m. to 5 a.m., $57 I make. This is Uber X. This is Uber X.
So to get their story, I took a cab. Asifo Adei has been driving for 27 years, and he says, thanks to Uber, he now has nothing to show for it.
At 57 years old, I cannot go and start a new job. The future looks very bleak, very, very bleak indeed.
After expenses, cabbies across Canada now are lucky to make minimum wage. In Toronto, the system Asafo works under is especially tough. Most cabbies pay daily for an agent and fleet operator. Those middlemen pay for dispatch services and, most important, the licenses. Many are owned by investors who sit back and watch the money roll in. Everyone down the line gets paid, the cabbie keeps what's left. Or if they're lucky, a cabbie buys his own license and shoulders all the expenses, renewal fees, insurance, keeping the car compliant with all the regulations. That's Asifo. It took him years to get the license he hoped to sell to cover his retirement someday. Then, in 2014, the city changed the licensing scheme, and Uber destroyed his business.
They have made a certain commitment with us, and we followed all those commitments, and then halfway, they create this new hocus pocus system, and they say, well, we can't control that.
So, what difference does that make in your life?
I don't have a life. I work 12 hours a day. Over that, I pretty much work just to survive. And as you can imagine, if this continues at my age, I will probably end up in a poorhouse.
Toronto has about 5,000 regulated cab licenses. Add to that the number of drivers Uber says it had on the road over the course of a year, 16,000.
I would estimate about 40% of my income has been reduced.
Because there's so much more competition.
That's right. You see the whole thing in a microcosm at the island airport. To get flagged on the street today it's like Christmas. It's not happening.
Nobody flags you down?
No! This is where we all work now. If we are lucky, the plane lands and it brings in some customers. All these people in the past would be cruising, trying to get fares. It's absent now. It's totally absent. They come here, they wait, and if they're lucky, they get like a $10 round. Then they come back.
So you feel like you've been taken advantage of?
Yes, we've been taken advantage of, and nobody seems to be speaking on behalf of us. It appears that the whole society is against taxi drivers.
The fact is, riders love Uber's service. And since it drives around taxi regulations, it can undercut the competition. Do you use Uber?
Yeah,
Yeah, why?
it's cheaper.
It's cheaper, it's more convenient.
It's cheap, affordable, and it's reliable.
For Uber riders, if there's any guilt, it's just another price to put on their tab.
Yeah, it is not fair for the taxi drivers.
But you'll still take a ride to Uber sometime?
Hi there.
As for Uber drivers,
Hi. Can I talk to you?
they're just trying to make a buck.
I'm at CBC.
Everything
they're saying is okay, you know, but what can we do?
After expenses, many Uber drivers also barely clear minimum wage. The company's own stats show about half its U.S. drivers quit within a year. Uber changes the trade into something short-term, part-time. But for Asafo, it's a lifetime.
I've been in this business for 27 years. And all of a sudden, nowhere to go.
This week, Toronto taxi drivers announced they will seek a court injunction against Uber. A spokesman said the industry is, quote, stepping up to do the job City Council has chosen not to do. An earlier effort to get an injunction was thrown out of court last summer.